I do martial arts related content and security related content. I'm also extremely right-wing. So what's going on, guys? It's me, Fred the Bodyguard. You've been here before, you know the score. I make martial arts related content, I make security related content. I also make content about whatever I want to make content about. So if you enjoy it, then like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. But I've been a bodyguard for the past couple of years, and I've been around the world with various YouTubers, Kurt Kaz, Tal Oliveira, Charlie Leach, just making sure people don't grab the camera. I've been a doorman for 10 plus years, and I've done martial arts all my life. I'm not saying I'm the best, I'm not saying I'm a pro fighter or anything like that, but I do what I can, and I'm here to tell you how to do what you can. I want you to ask yourself, how do you feel about this at the end? I want you to think, if this were your wife or your daughter, or even if they weren't a woman, if your son was walking around and could reliably be beaten up, and I've been beaten up myself. I know plenty of people that have been assaulted by gangs of these people. My friend, for instance, right, my coach, yeah, he's half Pakistani, by the way, my coach, okay? His daughter was working at a Chinese restaurant with a kitchen porter that was from Sudan, right? Nothing against Sudan at all whatsoever. I've got, I'm sure there's loads of great people that live there, but this guy was a kitchen porter, was making threats because his daughter was basically one above him and telling him what to do. And because it's a woman, right, telling him what to do, he couldn't accept it, because in their country, there is no situation in which a woman would be superior to you in any kind of way, shape, or form. So she's rang her dad saying, "Oh, this guy's threatening me. This guy's looking at the meat, chopping the meat, and going, oh, you're next. I'm gonna get you. You're a fucking bitch." Blah blah blah. So my mate's turned up. My coach turned up and confronted him. The guy's pulled a screwdriver out, right, and gone to stab him. My friend actually managed to break some of his fingers, but he has stabbed him once in the face.
Stabbed in the face.
And then as they were wrestling, he stabbed him once in the back there. So this guy has no reason to have a screwdriver on him. I'm personally for being able to defend yourself, but according to the law of the UK, you're not allowed to have just random tools on you. Provided, like, if you're an electrician or you're a joiner, it would make sense for you to have a screwdriver or a drill or something that's appropriate to the work that you're doing. There's no reason why a kitchen porter would just be armed with a screwdriver randomly. This, when he got stabbed in the face, it went through his cheek and into his gum, right, to the point where he could go, and loads of blood would fucking burst out of his cheeks.
Watch this.
The guy was let off, not charged at all, and nothing's happened from it whatsoever. Even though it's all on CCTV, there is an agenda at work here where they're trying to, it's like they're trying to wind us up. It's like they're trying to get us to the point where we're willing to fight back and then clamp down on us. There's a reason why you're being prosecuted for social media posts, because what they're doing is they're letting this violence fester. And once people start to kick off about it, they're going to clamp down with the full force of the law and the state, and they're going to know who is prepared to do anything. And that's what they want. They want you to out yourself by saying these type of things. But someone has to say it, and that person is me. So what should be done about this? What do you expect is going to happen when you allow millions of fighting age men into your country and who've got no ability to assimilate into our culture whatsoever and hate us, right? What do you think is going to happen in 10, 20 years? If you look at every experiment with multiculturalism, whether it's Yugoslavia or Iraq or Syria, any time that you bunch up millions of people from different cultures together, force them all to live together, once the situation gets bad enough where the money's run out, the money doesn't buy you anything anymore, and the benefits have run out, now you just got millions of angry, dispossessed young men who are ready to commit violence well before there was any kind of actual need for it. Imagine if there was an actual conflict. We've just invited millions of enemy combatants to come and live in our countries and just gone, hope for the best.
We are all Britons.
So in the UK, we've got a population officially of 69.5 million. If you look at the amount that we consume, the amount is probably higher. At the very least, we know that it's better. We know that it's higher because not everybody fills out a census. There's always people, like every 10 years they do a census of population in this country. So guaranteed, out of all those, even if it's just one person that doesn't fill out the form, we know that it's at least one person more than what they're saying lives here. If you look at the amount that we're actually consuming and the amount of supplies, the water, the services, the food, etc., the population's realistically much higher than 69.5 million. The estimated illegal migrant population is between 700,000 and 1 million. If you consider that the UK Armed Forces has around 80,000 active personnel, that's 80,000 So let's round it up to 100,000, let's say, okay? So 100,000 times 10, that's 1 million. That's the entire population of our armed forces is now in this country. Who knows who they are? Who knows what they're up to? Really, it doesn't take that many people to actually take over a country or to get behind the levers of power. Once these people are taken into our country, they start, obviously, just like the natural human impulse is to go and live near people that speak like you and are like you. So they turn themselves into their own ethnic enclaves. Those enclaves spread and spread and spread until they're the size of Birmingham. Then they hire their own elected representatives. In the UK, we've got 17, or something like 17, maybe 16, 18, not important. We've got 17, 16 foreign MPs that are from Pakistan, right? These people are advocating to build an airport in Mirpur, right? So it's easier for these people to go home and visit all their relatives. These people are actively advocating for their own community, and who can blame them? That's what you would do. If we turned Benidorm into somewhere the size of Birmingham, and it was filled with English people, suddenly all the laws would start favouring what English people want, you know? So it really doesn't take that many people to start making a political influence in this country. If we take the figures, right, and we go 69.5 million, 70 million, right, that means that roughly 1% of the population is illegally in the country. 1%, that means 1 in every 100 people, which is like a lot of people, really, if you consider that these people are, you know, far more likely to commit crime statistically, you know. We're not inviting the best and brightest from around the world to come and live here. We've got people that are proportionately way higher crime rates, way higher grape rates, way higher SA rates, way higher violence unaliving rates, right? I'm sorry, I think I use these stupid words because fucking YouTube.
So what's the statistics there? What's that 1%?
What do you mean?
That 1% of the population that are immigrants. What's that number?
That's between 700,000 and 1 million.
700,000.
Yeah.
1 million.
So
then what's 1% of that?
Of 1 million.
Yeah, is
a grand.
No, it's 10,000.
10,000, right?
If 1% of that got together and started causing trouble, 10,000 of them, what would we do?
Great point, exactly.
Yeah.
If even 0.1% of this, or 1%, that's like what, 10,000? 100,000 people. That's the size of a football stadium. It does not take, it takes a few people to do an attack. You know, it takes, if you look at the Soviet Union, these people who took over a continent-sized country, which is Russia, right? And then all the surrounding countries, Bulgaria, Estonia, etc., they took all of Eastern Europe into the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, into the USSR, right? These people were previously having meetings discussing about it in groups of 10, 20, 30 in London, Paris, Switzerland. It takes very few people. I mean, if you look at like how many MPs are there? What, 600, 650 MPs? You know? So if you have a sizable proportion of our elected representatives who are actively representing a community other than the community or the national community of this country, you know, these people have a disproportionate level of power and they make laws that favour themselves. Of the migrant foreign-born population, that makes up around 16% of our country. 16%, right? So if you look at our total population and take out the old people who are going to die soon, and you take out the young babies who are, we've got something like just under replacement level. What do you call it? Birth rate. So if 16% of these people, of the people in this country, right, they're having 4, 5, 6 children, and we're having 1 child, right? These people, if you do the simple maths, by the time these children are 30, their population will have increased by 4 times the size. So 4 times 16, I don't even know what that is. That's 1 million. No, what is that? That's nearly half. That's over half, isn't it? Realistically, people can't think 20, 30 years down the line because they're busy thinking about football or they're thinking about Love Island, right? These people, like, you know, we are really sleepwalking into an absolute disaster. And because it doesn't look immediately apparent that this is the situation now in your everyday life, right? We can't just we're so short-sighted that we can't think, people are eventually going to get older. We're not having many children, they're having lots of children. Lots of our population are old, they're going to die soon, right? So of our population, 70 million or so, let's say 30% of that is old, beyond 60. What influence could they have? Could they fight back? Could they do anything, really? You know, at some point, they're just going to die and their children are going to have less children than they had before them. Like, for instance, my granddad, right, was one of 11 children. And my mum was one of 4 children. I've got 1 child. So you can see that the decline is like clearly apparent. So these people are brought here and they're told they can live for free. And the more children they have, the more the government will support them. They just took off the 2-child benefit cap. So now, as many children as you have, the government will now support you. So if you have one guy with 4 wives, as is allowed in most of the Middle East, right? That's four people having 4 children each, all supported by the government. What are we doing? This is insane. No other country would do that. Like, you would never just go outside. Let's say you had loads of jewelry and all your wealth, and you just thought, I'll just give whatever I want to whoever at any point. How is it that, like, if we don't, like, when a plane's going to crash, yeah, not that it happens very often. If a plane crashes, they tell you, fix your own oxygen mask before you fix someone else's. If we truly wanted to fix the world's problems, the best thing that we could do is be the best nation, the most advanced nation, the nation that could truly have the actual power. What gives you the actual ability to change something? Is having power, right? To have power, you first have to believe in yourself that you have got the ability to win and go forward and prosper. You know, so if we actually wanted to make a difference in their countries, we could actually totally do that by just making our own situation much, 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 much better. You know, all we need to do is not invade the rest of the world and then not open the door to the place. And then we could just truly, if we were interested in really aiding people, we could probably feed these people from here at half the cost. I mean, Poland, right, gets fined like €1 million every day, 1 million euros every day. That's 365 million euros a year. That's a fucking bargain. We could have stayed in the European Union, just decided to break the rules and not cooperate and do whatever we wanted. And for the low price of 365 million euros every year, we could not have this problem. If you go to Poland, right, I'm not saying it doesn't have its own problems, but you can walk around, you don't have to worry about crazy people in the park going insane, you don't have to worry about looking over your shoulder to make sure that these people, the group of guys aren't going to beat you up, you know, or worse. You know, you don't have to, women can walk down the street at night totally unbothered. You know, if you try and walk around any city centre in the UK, that's impossible, especially as a young woman, as we'll find out. In 2024 to 2025, the UK recorded 200,000 sexual offences in this country. Most sexual offences go unrecorded because you can't prove consent and you can't prove what really happened because there's not cameras absolutely everywhere, especially in the situations in which you might be sexually assaulted. You know, so really the number is probably 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, you can't know how many times higher it is, but you know that it's much more than 200,000. In the year 2024, migrants made up 28% of those reported for sexual offences. So if you consider that 1% of our population are doing 30%, let's say, of our sexual offences, that is gigantic and disproportionate. If you put that into a football stadium, imagine what that would look like. When adjusted for population size, this means that migrants were arrested for sexual offences at 3 to 3.5 times the rate as native-born UK citizens. Illegal migrants make up 1 to 1.4% of the population, but they are responsible for 1 out of every 4 arrests for sexual assault. In Germany, the population is around 83 million people, 15% of which are foreign nationals. Estimated illegal immigrants in Germany are around 1 million, same as the UK, 1.2% of the population. In Germany, apparently we had 13,000 cases of rape and sexual assault, and 11,000 of them were identified suspects, which means that, 2,000 of them, roughly, we don't know who they are, where they are, what they were doing, etc. We have no idea who was responsible. So they're still out there walking around, who knows what they're up to. 4,437 suspects were non-German, right? That means that 39% of the suspects were non-German. All right, so with my camera that I've got in front of me, I've got a phone here, right, with the statistics laid out. I'm trying to talk to you and belt the statistics off, you know, without looking at the screen. So I'm just going to look at the screen, I don't care.
I like do the cha-cha.
So German citizens apparently make up 85% of the population and are 61% of sexual suspects. Migrants and non-Germans are 15% of the population and make up 39%. That's ridiculous. You know, if you were on purpose going to invite a group of people into your job, like if you tried to get a job in the police or in a nursery or in construction, you know, they would do a basic background check on you and make sure that you're not on drugs and you've not got any convictions for murder and whatever else, right? You know, but we are on purpose inviting a population, and we know for a fact that they are much more likely to commit serious crime, and yet we continue to bring them in here on purpose. What is going on? That is not by accident. There is no way but that's by accident. You know, someone with a cursory glance at what these countries are like would go, They don't really think of women in the same way that we think of them. They don't really have the same respect for, like in England, right? We approach this subject. We invented common law, right? The idea that your home's your castle and you've got certain rights that are inalienable to you, right? The police can't just arrest you and then not tell anybody where you've gone. You can't just be disappeared. The whole concept of common law is that the government doesn't interact with you and you leave everyone else alone and everyone else leaves you alone. You've got basic rights to your property and your health and self-defense. We came up with those as concepts, right? In other countries, that is a foreign concept to them. They don't really care. Other countries feel they have the right to do whatever they want to you, right? And what you want personally is not really relevant. So when a woman walks outside uncovered, right, as far as they're concerned, she's inviting sexual attention from them.
If she walks in clothes because of which the rape took place, then she's responsible.
Right? Because in their culture, right, women that are covered up and guarded by their brothers and their family are not your property. Women are considered property in many countries. Women don't have basic rights to their own bodily autonomy. If I went to a foreign country, even if you go to Spain and try and walk in a shop with your shirt off, they'll tell you off about it. Other countries will enforce what they want you to do based on what they expect as a country. Now, our country is founded on the principle of every individual should be left alone, provided that they're leaving everybody else alone. That is not how other countries work at all. Illegal immigrants are only 1.2% of the population, but they exist inside a category responsible for almost 40% of rape assaults. 1% of the population are doing nearly half of the sexual assaults. 1% are doing nearly half of the sexual assaults. I've got a great way of reducing crime by 40%. Imagine if you said that to the average person. All we've got to do is get rid of these people who are committing crimes, and then we would have a sexual assault rate that would be 40% lower. That's so insanely stupid and so cheap. That's like a gift horse looking in the mouth and saying, here you go, here's a clearly, easily available solution to you, which you can easily protect women and children to a much greater extent. You can just get rid of the people who are responsible for doing these crimes. I'm not really even saying that we need to deport them. If you commit, right, even though they have different standards for what is considered rape in Middle Eastern countries and the parameters, the standards necessary to obtain a conviction, right? Still, on paper, right, if you were to commit one of these offences in Saudi Arabia, you'd be likely to be lashed, beheaded, have a hand taken off, and that's for crimes that are not even nearly as serious as what we're talking about here. So I'm really not advocating for these people to be sent back home, if you know what I mean. Every crime that these people commit, that's a crime that didn't have to happen because these people are not from here. They're not our responsibility. We invited them into this country and they decided to commit a crime. That didn't need to happen. Our own criminals, they live here and they do what they do and we catch them and punish them for it. For instance, right, here's where our cultures differ. With the Pakistani rape gangs, the crimes were often being committed by different generations of the same family. If the guy who's helping me out with the camera now, right, said to me, "Hey, yeah, Fred, I've got this girl over here, and she's 11-year-old, and we can just insert a bicycle pump inside her, and then just get 11 of our mates round and just do whatever we want with her. Do you want? Are you in?" People would turn up at my door and beat me up. People would. They would never accept it.
Right to jail, right away.
Our rapists and our criminals have to hide. Yeah, they have to hide their intentions. People who are nonces or the rest of it, they keep their images and their things that they get off to. They keep them hidden hidden on hard drives and hide their identities and keep all their wants and desires hidden because they know that the social stigma and the backlash would ruin their lives. That's the culture that we operate in here. If you were revealed to be a murderer or a nonce or anything like that, your life would essentially be over. You wouldn't have any friends. No one would associate with you. You look at the Jamie Bulger killers. What they did, they had to have their names and identities changed because people are that angry that they wanted to find them and punish them themselves for this. However, in their culture, right? One of the Rochdale rape gang guys that was actually convicted and sent to prison. His family were there in the dock, going, "Yeah, we love you, Dad. We love you, Dad. We'll see you soon." You know, if my dad or someone in my family was found guilty of a crime like that, I would disown them completely. I would never talk to them again, and I'd consider reprisals against them personally without anyone prompting me. No one would have to make me feel bad. No one would have to fucking like encourage me to go and punish these people. If you saw a crime like that being committed on the street, you know, maybe you wouldn't do anything, but I certainly would do something, and I'd like to think that more people in this country should do something really when they see these type of crimes going on. My friend the other day, right? My friend. Yeah, he was at the Britannia Hotel not long ago. I'm not sure. I'm not going to say his name. Right, blank out the name. My friend, right, he was at the Britannia Hotel a few months ago while I was working abroad. Right, he rang me up and told me that this 6-foot African guy chased this 4'11", 5'1" girl who ran to him and stabbed her in the face multiple times and booted her and like punched her in the face and like ruined her life. And my friend had to drag her off and drag her to safety. And everybody stood around and watched and did nothing. Right? This person is not our responsibility. Who are we inviting here? But these people, they don't even feel afraid of the consequences. These people, a lot of the time, if you've got an IQ, let's say the average IQ in the UK is 100, yeah? That means half of those people are below average IQ, right? When you get to like 85, 75, 65 IQ, you don't have an inner monologue, you're not thinking properly, you just exist in a world of colours and sounds and feelings, and you just do whatever it is that you want to do. These people are not on the same level as your average Western European resident. You know, these people are not thinking. You almost can't blame them because they are not really in control of themselves. You know, these people would get lynched if they did anything like that. And the reason why a lot of these cultures are extremely forceful and willing to punish you with the most extreme severity is because it keeps these people in line. And their countries, unfortunately, are full of these people who have decided, I can just go to where all the lovely, beautiful white women are and go there and nothing will happen to me. At the most, I might get a suspended sentence or deported back to the country where I'm from, which almost never happens really. But at the worst, you go back to where you were originally. You know, if you tried any of this with someone's daughter in Iraq, right, there would be a lynch mob outside your house, right? The police wouldn't even be able to keep you in the cells because a crowd would form around if you tried that in Brazil, yeah, the community would force the police to hand these people over. Like for instance, in Bangladesh, yeah, one Hindu guy was accused of insulting the main man from a certain religion, right? And the police were forced to hand this guy over to the baying crowd, who then kicked his head in and then strapped him to a lamppost and set fire to him on the street. And there is nothing that the authorities could do. The authorities were complicit. You know, that's where these people are coming from. You know. So they are willing to punish much less severe crimes with much higher harshness than we would, right? But we are prepared to finance you, give you a free phone, somewhere to live, make sure that all your needs are taken care of, right? And the legal system will actively run cover for you. And they're having the red carpet rolled out for them. You know? So imagine if you got an XL bully that had been like tortured all his life, and then we're like, hey, have this as a family pet.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
No, exactly. And if a normal person who's like otherwise, maybe not the brightest, maybe whatever, is capable of that type of thing, imagine what insane people who are already wrong-uns, right, who have gone through, like for instance, my mate, yeah, I was working on the doors with him, and he was telling me, he came in from Libya, right, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who are migrants and even from these people, right, who are good people, I'm sure, right, like the guy that I was working with, right, and he said the ISIS kidnapped his brother and him and shot his brother in front of him, and he was in the room with his dead brother with a fucking hole in his head for 24 hours, and I got in a fight. I was working Christmas Eve, right, and I punched this guy in his face, and his blood came out of his mouth, right, and the sight of the blood made him like start shaking uncontrollably. These are like the effects of what these insane crimes do to people. And luckily, he's a good person. But how do we know? How do we really know who this guy is, right? You know, and it's a shame what happened to him. And there's nothing like, I'm not trying to accuse him of anything or whatever, right? But I'm just saying, this is the type of situations that we're bringing people over from, right? The places where the governments have been completely destroyed, right? You can't ring up the the Office of National Statistics. You can't ring up the police in Libya and be like, "Hey, do you know Mohammed? is he okay?" Like that dead end in the phone, like.
Yo.
What's up?
So let's get on to France. Okay, in France, the population is 68 million people. Foreign nationals are about 10% of the population. The estimated illegal immigrants are roughly 600,000 to 1 million, about 1.5% of the population. French police and justice statistics show migrants and non-citizens make up between 25% and 30% of the suspects in serious violent sexual crimes. In prisons, foreigners are consistently overrepresented compared to the population size. So, in every country, we see the same patterns emerging. You know, we don't even have to look at our own statistics. We can go, what's it like at our neighbour's house in France, in Germany? And we can go, don't want that here. And Poland has done exactly that. They've gone, we see what's happening in Germany, in France, in Belgium, in the UK, and they've gone, nah, we're not doing that. All they have to do is go, no, we don't just, nope, not happening, sorry, you know. And they're called racist, and they're called white supremacists, whatever. This is a country, Poland is a country invaded by the communists and the Nazis at the same time, right? Completely destroyed. Their country didn't exist for like 120 years or something like that, you know. These people have got nothing to do with colonialism or slavery. They never had a crazy empire across the world. They never went around invading other countries or anything like that. And they're being told that they are Nazis. They're being accused of being the thing that they were completely destroyed by, right? Because they don't want loads of unvetted illegal immigrants in their country doing rape and sexual assaults. You know, there's an agenda behind it. Of course there is. Why is it that every other country has got a right to have itself as the main population? You know, in China the population is Chinese. In Japan, the population is Japanese. In Israel, the population is 8% Jewish, right? You know, everywhere's got the right to have their own people in their own place, in their own zone, live in their own way, in their own life. And if you want to go to Somalia, and where they accept all these things that we would never accept, that's why Somalia exists. So you can go there and go over and try and do all this stuff and see how far you get, you know. And
see, like, you know, it's you know, people don't think, oh, you can eat bananas with rice.
Like, we don't want to live like you. They don't want to live like us. That's fine. They've got their own place. We've got our own place, right? They've got somewhere else to go to. We've got nowhere else to go to. We don't have anywhere else, right? We can't migrate to America, or, you know, we can't replace our entire population, although a lot of people are emigrating to Australia, etc. But there's nowhere else for us to live. And just because we've done things that are bad in the past, or things that are wrong in the past, that doesn't mean the individual person living in 2025 has any responsibility for any of that. We're just living our lives, and we want to get on and go to work, go to the gym, see a girlfriend, and get on, have a family, just do everyday normal things, right? And we're being told that no. In fact, we've got to live in a cyber dystopia full of people that hate us and want to rape and murder us. The brilliant part about the world and going on holiday is that we can go to other countries and see how they live and have like a little visit, right? You can go around your mate's house and have a nice time with him, but eventually you go home, you know, because you don't live in your friend's house and your friend doesn't live in your house. You know, the diversity, right, means difference, right? In order to have difference, you have to have separation. You have to have discrimination. You discriminate every day between whether you want your steak well done or rare. You know, you discriminate between whether someone's your friend or your enemy. You discriminate between whether the car's coming down the road or it's not. You know, you make discrimination is another word for choosing, right? And we choose to live in a certain way, and that's what makes England its own thing. That's what makes Germany its own thing. What makes China its own thing, and that's what makes it so cool. I'm actually all totally for diversity, right? But you can't have diversity, right? If you have an artist, right, and they use blues and reds and yellows and pinks and greens to paint a beautiful picture and show you this scene, it's made up of the differences between those colours, between those aspects, right? If you got all the colours and just blend them all into one, it becomes one big homogeneous sludge with no difference, no culture, no religion, no anything, nothing that actually makes life worth living, right? Because we all just like live in Amazon world, you know.
Imagine all the people.
Imagine all the living for today. That is a fucking horrible song. It's a horrible, horrible song. no heaven above us. Let's just all be the same, and where the world can live as one. No, I don't want to live as one, right? I don't want to live as one. I want to live as my own thing, and other people can go and live in their own thing, and I can go and appreciate them or not, and they can come here and appreciate us or not. And if they don't like it, they can go somewhere else.
Fuck off.
And if we don't like it, we can go somewhere else and be by ourselves in our own place. That's fine. You can come over, then you go home again. Ta-da!
Oi! Keep your fingers out of my soup.
French citizens make up 90% of their population, and they make up around 70 to 75% of the sexual crime suspects. Migrants and non-citizens make up 10% of their population and make up 25 to 30% of their suspects. Do the maths. Notice basic patterns. I'm not a mathematician, right? But I can go, these guys keep doing crimes. They keep doing horrible crimes to us. Is there a pattern emerging here? If you fucking ring a bell, right, every time a dog's supposed to eat some food, right, the dog starts salivating, the dog's gone, when the bell rings, then the food is what I get, so start salivating, etc., right? So even a dog can go, when X happens, Y is the result. So if we look at migration around Western Europe, right, and in every case, a small fraction of the people are doing it 30 to 45% of the population of the crimes, we can just easily infer from that it might not be a good idea to have those people over in our country. And all we'd have to do to reduce sexual crime by 40%, almost half, is just say, you have to go home. And we find that so hard. We find that that's such a horrible crime. How could you be so cruel to these people that have gone through so much? But the same people who want you, all the feminists want you to, they want you to be like, oh, protect women and believe women, and women are being sexually assaulted, and it's so unfair. And yeah, totally 100%. It's horrible. But the same people are advocating for the main group that are coming here that are going to do those crimes. You got to remember, these people do 2 plus 2 equals 5 to these people. It's all about what feels right in their mind. Brown person in another country equals poor babies. These people haven't got their own agency. They're actually really racist if you think about it. They think these people have got no agency over themselves or whatever, and they're just the victims, right? Everybody else is a victim, and white European culture is just evil and oppressive and so horrible to them, so they just deserve to come over here and have their vengeance on us, and whatever they do is just a result of the circumstances they were brought up in, and we have to understand that and make sure that they're okay, because really he's not really a rapist, he's just a tortured soul that's been through a lot. At the end of the day, right, maybe they've been through this, maybe they've been through that, right, but the end result is millions of people, millions of women are getting raped and murdered, right, around the world needlessly. Illegal migrants in France are 1 to 1.5% of the population, but they exist inside a group responsible for up to 1/3 of sexual crime suspects. Again, just basic look at the patterns that we're setting. Look at what's happening. These people are reliably doing crimes at a certain rate, and we could just say no, but we choose to go yes. Yes, crime. Yes, I love it. I love it. When you go to Germany, right, and you point out any of these flaws, they kind of like it. They kind of the life's so soft that they kind of like that they're in a cyberpunk dystopia and things, there's graffiti everywhere and people are doing drugs everywhere because it's all just so rugged and edgy and whatever. If you it's almost like Saudi billionaires, right? They have everything they ever want, right? Or Arab billionaires, let's say, and they can't get excited by anything anymore. So only the worst things really pleasure them and please them.
Shitting on a girl's
Absolutely,
chest,
exactly, shit on a girl's chest.
From Langley.
Right. So, yeah. So, even though their life's perfect, they want to have horrible times on purpose because it gives them meaning. I feel like these people, they want things to be as bad as possible because they have nothing to live for. And this is the thing, when you get rid of religion, even whether you're religious or not, right? When you get rid of the culture, right? People just exist for themselves, right? And when the standard of living is high enough and there's nothing to live for, people become nihilistic and just don't care. A group of committed, ideologically driven people can change the world. A small group of people can do that. If you look at what a bullet can do, a bullet is a tiny bit of metal, but shot at the right speed, it can go through and damage and destroy things and completely rip you apart, So the smallest things make the biggest impacts. So if you have 10,000 people, 1% of a million people, that's a problem. That's a problem that the riot police could never handle. If you had 10,000 people who are committed to kicking off and had weapons, there is almost nothing the police could really do if they were really committed, right? That's on the like conservative side of the amount of people that are here that are prepared to do stuff. So if you scale that up, right, 10,000 to a million people, there's a million people, and a good chunk of them, right, are ideologically driven and care nothing for our civilization, actively hate us, want to destroy us, and think we're living in the wrong way, and they're here to change us to make their world make this world like what their world is. They want to come to this country where we have laws and they want to come to our country, right, and complain about our country and make our country like what theirs is like. The people make up the country. The reason why, you can say that, oh well, we've done this and we've done that, but yeah, you would be right. But really, it's the people of the country that no one's forcing millions of people in India to shit on the street and throw the rubbish everywhere. We're not responsible for that. Like, other people's cultures, right, are made up, are the way they are because of the people that reside within them. I'm not saying that there aren't loads and loads of good people there. Of course there are. But I'm just saying, as a generalization, right, the reason why countries are as messed up as they are is because of the people that are in those countries. And there's nothing you can do about that. They say in the American Revolution, there's around 3% of people that ended up actually fighting. And you could probably say that's more, that you could say that's like of the actual colonies, armies that were fighting against the British Redcoats, right? And there's loads of guerrilla fighters, all the rest of it, right? But you consider that we're really not, like, didn't have the massive population explosion that we had after the Industrial Revolution. So even if it's not 3%, right, 4%, 5%, 6%, that's a tiny fraction of the population, and they can take over a continent-sized country and beat off the British Empire. So, like, if you look at the Soviet Union, yeah, groups of Lenin and Beria and Malenkov and Stalin, these like tiny groups of people can get behind the levers of the state and take over a continent-sized country. So the smallest groups make the biggest difference. In fact, the opposite is also true. The biggest groups often make no difference at all because you can't get everybody on the same team. But if you have like a group of 5 people that are all committed on one task and working towards it, they can achieve something massive, way disproportionately to their size, because they have the flexibility to work together and to get around and be committed and be strong and to concentrate their forces where other people are dividing their forces. So it's like, for instance, in jiu-jitsu, yeah, I might be weaker than my opponent, right? But if I can put my hips on his arm, right, I can break his arm because in that particular situation, in that particular angle, I'm stronger than him and I can break in here because I've got the leverage and the mechanics to do it, right? So similarly, if you have groups of people in this country or other Western European countries who are leveraging their particular block together, like look at Jews in Israel, right, or Jews around the world. They're a tiny fraction of the world, right? But they make up so many of the lawyers and the doctors and the politicians and the people that are in media and all the rest of it, right? Because they decide to work together and help together. Whether you think they're bad, whether you think they're good, is not really relevant. These people work together and are all view themselves as being on Team Israel, yeah? So they work together for their common purposes. Even though they're a tiny population, they've managed to make a country out of it. They've decided they can elevate each other and help each other to get forward in life and exist to cooperate and help their own people. We could take those lessons and use those for ourselves, and we could all be on Team British Empire and change the world like we did before. Like when we went to other countries, right? We did numerous terrible things. Every empire in the world has done terrible things, great things, in between things, mid things, stupid things, smart things, right? But we went around the world, and the world is drastically different because of what we did. The Native Americans are completely gone. They're completely gone. They live on tiny reservations, and most of them are related to white people now, right? So that's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong. That's what's going to happen to this country, right? If you turn the population of this country into the population of Bangladesh, right, then England doesn't seem to be England anymore. And the cool thing about England is that it's its own little bit. We only have a tiny little bit of land.
300 bottleneck.
Great example. Example. So before I talked about jiu-jitsu, yeah. So like when I'm armbarring you or whatever, you might be a really muscly, athletic guy, but if I've got you in that position, I've got the ability at that moment to break something and really, really injure you. So just like the Spartans in the Peloponnesian War, right? they at Thermopylae, at the Hot Gate, I think it's Thermopylae, they, if you watch 300, I'm sure you've seen, they force the gigantic Persian army to fight them on their terms, where they only had the small number, but the numbers didn't mean anything because in that particular moment, in that particular geographical area, right, they had the advantage, right? So you leverage your strength against the opponent's weakness, yeah, and that's how you get by in life. And that's what these people, other people are more than prepared to do that to us, because they view themselves, no matter whether they've been here for 10 years, whether they're third generation or whatever, right? Like when there's Pakistan Independence Day, right, they're all waving Pakistan flags. That's fine. I'm totally for that. That's great. Go Pakistan, you know? But they all view themselves and they know that they are similar to each other based on genetics, culture, religion, right? And they know that they're related to each other. So they view themselves as being on Team Pakistan. So they know they're not from here. We know they're not from here. They're not us. We're not them. In order to have us and them, in order to have, like, to define things, you must have, in order to define groups, you've got people that are outside of their groups, you know? So
what's happened in the past when like the condensed cultures and communities, like what's statistically been the problems in different places over the years?
Yeah, so in Iraq, right, we created that country essentially with the Sykes-Picot Agreement. This is again our fault, British fault, and the French fault. We divided the country and we put the Sunnis and the Shias into one country. We put the Kurds into one country. The Kurds are in Turkey. The Kurds are in Iraq. The Kurds are in Iran. You know, all these people now don't have a state, and they're forced to just cooperate with each other, even though they've got nothing in common with each other. They don't speak the same language. They don't have the same religion. They don't see eye to eye on anything. And the only way you can get by is by having a strongman leader who's prepared to lay the law down and force people to cooperate. Like in Yugoslavia, you had Tito. After Tito died, who was keeping Yugoslavia in order, then you had the Serbs and the Croats and the Bosnians and the Kosovans, right, who all wanted to advocate for themselves and be their own people. And because that's how human society works. Humans are group animals. You know, we don't have claws, we don't have wings, we don't have, we can't fly, we can't jump really high. You know who are not racist, right? Bears are not racist, tigers are not racist, right? Because they're one-man armies that can do everything for themselves. A tiger can hunt for itself and doesn't need to rely on anyone for anything because it's the super apex predator. We're not like that. We don't have claws, we don't have fangs. We rely on people that are in our group, and our genetics are trying to propel themselves forward. So, like, I often say to people, if you had your child or my child, and someone said, your child dies or my child dies, you would choose that my child dies because you love your own child. Doesn't mean you hate my child, which means that you love your own child, you know? So we value people who look like us, who speak the same language as us, who are actually related to us. Like, for instance, my friends, yeah, like all people in the UK, you might not be my immediate family, but like on some level, you are actually my family because we are actually distantly related. That's why we have the same genetic, we have the same colour skin, all our faces look similar. You go to Holland and loads of people are really tall because they're actually related to each other. It's a giant family, millions and millions of people, and forcing who are all from everywhere, forcing them into the same situation. Like, for instance, people are thinking, oh, it's you're being racist, you're white supremacist, whatever. You got to remember, right? When India and Pakistan were beefing with each other, right? People like Muslims and Hindus on the streets of Leicester were fighting with each other in England.
Where are the armed men who come in to take the protesters away? Where are they?
Right? So it's not just like, whites against blacks or whites against Christians against Muslims, or whatever. You've got the different types of Muslims, and they don't like each other. You've got the Arab world has been nuking each other, not nuking each other, but you know, the Arab world has been fighting with each other over religion and culture for thousands of years. You know, and they can't even get on with each other. Inside your own family, you've probably got people that you don't agree with and you don't like and whatever. There's enough conflict even within your own group, yeah? But we're supposed to just believe that everyone's the same, everyone can just get on, everyone's an individual atom, right? And there's not part of anything, human nature doesn't exist, you know? And millions of years of evolution could just be thrown out the window because they think it looks nice on paper. Dutch citizens are around 85% of the population, and they are around 60 to 65% of the sexual crime suspects. Migrants and non-Dutch are around 15%, again, just like Germany, France, the UK, and they are around 35 to 40% of sexual crime suspects. Come on. That means that less than 0.5% of the population are inside a category responsible for over 1/3 of sexual crime suspects. 1/3 for 0.5% of the population. You know, who are we letting in? Who are these people? Why are we doing it to ourselves? This is unnecessary, completely unnecessary. As a final comparison, in the UK, Germany, France and the Netherlands, the illegal migrant population make up between 1 and 2% of the population. They're responsible for between 20 to 40% of sexual crimes in those countries. All right, partner. Keep on rolling, baby. You know what time it is. Right, this is not proportional. It's not random. It's a measurable concentration of violent sexual crime within very small population groups. This is what disproportion means in data terms. Small population share, large crime representation, high per capita impact. If you don't know what per capita means, just look it up. I'm not explaining it to you here. Okay, so now we have the stats out the way, we're going to review a few cases where migrants, both legal and illegal, have committed heinous crimes as examples to show you what these people are really like. You know, we can talk about numbers all day. We can say, oh, this percentage of people does this and this percentage of people does that, and here's, you know, maybe some of them are good and maybe some of them are bad, you know, but we're going to talk about a few cases just as an example of what these people are capable of, because if you don't really take in what's happened here, right, you're not really taking it. Like, you can say sexual assaults, right? You know, when someone's chopped up and put in a suitcase, right? When some 2-year-old is stabbed at a nursery with his dad, you know, when a Welsh choir boy runs into a Taylor Swift dance class and decides to murder 3 children, injuring 11 more, or injuring 11 total, you know, one of them got stabbed 120 times. One guy stabbed a small, tiny 4-year-old girl over 120 times. You know, this is the depth of depravity that these people sink to, and we are forced to endure day after day, month after month, decade after decade. And it's not even the tip of the iceberg. Joseph Stalin said the death of one is a tragedy. However, the death of millions is just a statistic. So when you look at millions of people, it depersonalizes it for you, and you don't really understand what's gone on. However, if you look at the death of one person, you can look at the actual tragedy involved, the people involved, the families ruined, the lives ended, right, of people that are totally innocent, children often. Until you appreciate the horror that these people have perpetrated on us, you know, you really won't grasp the situation fully. On October the 16th, 2023, an Afghan illegal immigrant raped a 15-year-old in Scotland. A 29-year-old Afghan man, Sadiq Niksad, good British name, who entered the UK in 2021 seeking asylum, was convicted of raping a 15-year-old schoolgirl in Falkirk Town Centre, Scotland. He received a 9-year sentence and will be deported after release. So that's 9 years of feeding him, clothing him, bathing him, making sure he's all right, making sure his basic needs are taken care of, and locking him in a cell. That means the prison officers, the court officials, the police, the salaries of all these people are costing us millions just to hold one person in a box who doesn't even deserve to be here in the first place. And after that, we're going to get rid of him anyway, send him back to Afghanistan. And then, you know what? He may just come back again with a different name and come and do it all over again, because who knows who these people are. In 2024, an asylum seeker raped a woman in Hyde Park, London. Abdul Rahman Adnan Abuela, a 42-year-old asylum seeker who arrived in the UK illegally in 2023, was convicted of raping a woman in Hyde Park in November 2024. He was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison in 2025. In August, an asylum seeker was jailed in Epping, the Kibatu case. Hadush Gerber. See, if I tried to remember this off a script, there's no way I'll be able to say it. Hadush, listen to this. Geberslassie Kibatu, a 38-year-old asylum seeker from Ethiopia, was convicted of multiple assault charges, including assault against a 14-year-old and a woman after arriving in June 2024. His conviction sparked protests in Epping, in Essex. In October, an asylum seeker was rearrested after an erroneous release. The UK police rearrested Kibatu after he was mistakenly released from prison in October. He will be deported following public pressure and government reform announcements. So, because enough people kicked off about this one case, he's going to be deported after millions of people around the country are up in arms about it. So, the amount of pressure and the amount of shouting and hollering and making a noise about it is enough to get one person deported. This is happening at scale all over Europe. In August, a Kurdish asylum seeker was jailed for rape. A Kurdish asylum seeker, Mehmet Ogur, was sentenced to 7 years in jail for raping a woman in Tamworth, which occurred in early 2025 after he had recently arrived in the UK on a small boat. In 2025, an Afghan asylum seeker is charged in Nuneaton rape case. 2 men reported to be Afghan asylum seekers were charged with abducting and raping a 12-year-old girl in Nuneaton in 2025. They faced multiple charges, including rape and intentional strangulation. These people don't need to be here. They're not our responsibility. Since when are the rest of the world's problems now our problems? If we're going to have responsibility for taking care of the world's criminals, we should have authority over the world, if that's the case. You can only expect us to have responsibility if you have authority. If you have nothing but responsibility and no authority, you are a slave. In 2025, an Afghan national is charged with rape in Manchester. A 28-year-old was called Sultani Bakatash, was charged with raping two 14-year-old girls in Manchester. He lived in the UK with indefinite leave to remain. So someone in an office somewhere is just going, yeah, well, he's not a citizen, but just let him stay here for as long as he wants, really, because, how do you even know how bad it is in their countries, really? I mean, how can you really justify, like, maybe there's people who are fleeing, right? But how can you possibly know that? For every person that's got a real story about how they can't go back to their country, how many more are just making it up or embellishing it because they want a free ride?
Well, if he was on the run and he was a criminal, wouldn't it be good to go to another country?
Imagine that, exactly. Imagine if you were on the run from the police, right, and someone gave you this magic get-out-of-jail-free card where they said you can just go halfway across the world and get taken care of completely, and no one will try and extradite you, and no one will even be able to know what you've done.
Well, most criminals flee the country when they're on run to go and commit more crime.
Exactly. And if you're not officially part of the country, you can't legally work. Whereas people are not going to be satisfied on living on 50 quid a week. So these people are going to get working. They're going to be selling drugs. They're going to be doing crimes. They're going to be stealing. They're going to be doing whatever, right? Because they've actually not got a way of legally making money. And liberals will go, oh, yeah, well, what we need to do is just make them all citizens then. Well, I don't think that's going to work. In Germany, a migrant sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl in Osnabrück. Azizadine al-Sheikh Suleiman, a 31-year-old Syrian immigrant, sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl in Osnabrück. He later fled to the UK, where he was arrested in 2025 under a European arrest warrant for deportation back to Germany. So you've got police cooperating with other countries to try and find where these people are. There are people working in offices, putting calls out. There's entire infrastructure based around monitoring these people. These are all things. It's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you don't get cancer in the first place, you don't have to go through chemotherapy and radiotherapy to solve the problem, if you just make sure that you didn't get cancer in the first place. In 2024, foreign nationals were disproportionately represented in pool assaults. Police data from across Germany indicated that in 2024, 65% of suspects in sexual assaults at public swimming pools were foreign nationals. So, whereas you think, oh, I'll go to the swimming pool and I'll do a few lengths, right? And the sign says no heavy petting and no dunking and no diving, right? What these people see who who often are completely illiterate, by the way, right? They see, women dressed in little bikinis dancing around and frolicking around for my amusement. Let's just see what I can get from it. These people, these people, look, if you've got plenty of people are capable of doing heinous crimes, right? However, if you've got someone that's a 65 IQ, 75 IQ person, and they see someone, in a bikini, right? Essentially their underwear, right? They've got no way of controlling themselves. They don't even have an established prefrontal cortex. They don't think, oh, this is wrong. They just think, oh, boobs, oh, ass, oh, that girl's naked. I want sex, me want sex, me want banana, me get banana. On January 15th, 2026, a Somali migrant is arrested in Germany on a UK warrant. 28-year-old Somali-born Dutch national wanted by UK for repeatedly raping his 13-year-old stepsister in 2020 was arrested on arrival in Germany in January 2026 and held under extradition proceedings. So, again, this is all lawyers, prosecutors, defendants, court clerks, security guards at the court. Think about what goes into running government infrastructure. These are all people who are on minimum wage, right, and up. So you've got salaries of hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people devoted to pursuing criminals, right? And instead of going, let's make their job easier by trying to reduce crime and therefore not putting pressure on all our public services, we've gone, no, we need more criminals. Research indicates foreign nationals accounted for between 28% and 34% of sexual assault convictions in England and Wales in 2024, compared with about 11% of the population for foreign-born residents. So even people that are coming here legally, well, we're looking at illegal migration, right? But if you legally let in a lot of these people, you can say, oh, well, it's just they're not illegal, they came here legally. But if you look at it, they're still disproportionately represented in the crime statistics. Government data shows asylum seekers housed in UK hotels were linked to hundreds of alleged offences, including 18 rape accusations, 5 attempted rapes and 35 sexual assaults between 2021 and 2025. Again, didn't need to happen, not our problem, not our people. What's it got to do with us? You know, last time I checked, most people who are illegal migrants in this country actually come from Pakistan, where there are no war. Like, nothing against Pakistan, big country, many different people live there, right? But there's no war going on there. How can you be fleeing asylum? How can you be claiming asylum in the UK from a country where there is no war? There is no serious thing that you're fleeing. You can say, oh, well, I'm going to get in trouble and whatever. But again, it's not really our responsibility. We've got the responsibility for the entire world. How many millions of people are we supposed to look after and baby just based on their say-so? Okay, so we've told you about the treatment that these people receive, how we roll the red carpet out for them, how we cater to every women need and make sure that they're taken care of, right? But let's get into how much this actually costs. The average cost to keep one prisoner in the UK is £51,000 to £54,000 per year, right? How much do you make per year? The average salary is around 30 to 40 grand in this country. So the average person is working and half their money is being taxed, well, not half, but, you know, a good proportion of their money is being taxed away from them, taken away from them without their consent to be spent on foreign criminals. You know, like, it costs more than your average salary to imprison one of these people for a year. And these people are often getting sentences of 9, 10, 11, 12 years, which is a lot less than what they should. I've got a much, much cheaper solution, and you can find it at B&Q.
What is that?
A rope. Or an axe.
See, my mind then was like Pulp Fiction. It was like...
Yeah, exactly.
I was getting a chainsaw.
We should televise Bruce Willis with a samurai sword or a chainsaw who just comes and fucking, like, you should roll the dice. You should be able to, like, vote in for your method of execution of these people, because there is nothing they deserve more than that. They deserve nothing less.
Can't you do that in certain countries? Vote for the execution of...
I don't know, but I think there's a good reality TV show that we could be hosting if we change what the law was.
That could be the theme tune.
Yeah. The thing is that the problem, we could actually go on for too long. Like, there's too many criminals. High security placement is right. Yeah. So if you think about all the training that goes into making sure that prison officers are equipped to do their job properly, you know, these people have to go through stressful situations. A lot of prison officers, they get attacked in prisons, you know, they get hot water thrown on them, they get fucking abused, the rest of it. Lots of people don't want to stay in the police. A lot of people join the police for 2 years and then go, I've had enough of this, you know, because the level of crime is just too much. The point is we're having to, like, impose, like, North Korean army standards on the police in this country, where we have to accept, like, 5'2" women to be police officers because no one wants to do the job. You know, we're expected to look after our country, but we're told by our government constantly that they hate us. You know, we're told that we're wrong, and standing up for our own people is wrong. So the only people that can actually get to do the job are, like, tiny little women and nerds, because all the actual hard dudes don't want to be police officers because they don't feel enfranchised by their own nation. Yeah. So just their food is around £3 per day. Now that's cheap, right? That is cheap, you'd think, right? That's £1,100 per year per prisoner, right? So if you've got, you know, do the maths. You're on about millions and millions and millions of pounds every year just to house the worst people that we have no responsibility to do whatsoever. Yeah, so there you go. The UK prison system total cost is over £7 billion per year. You know, that's money we could spend on healthcare, defence, infrastructure. You know, we could be improving education. We could be making sure that we have the best facilities in the world. You know, imagine if we could have flying cars if we didn't have all these people who are not our responsibility and making sure that their food, clothing are taken care of. Yeah, one prisoner is about £4,250 per month, right? Most people make, what, £2,000 a month? You know, £2-3 a month. So you're working your ass off to get less than what some rapist gets spent on him every month. One prisoner is about £140 per day. One prisoner is over £50,000 per year paid by taxpayers. So you work and slave all day. You can't own a house properly because it's too expensive. Your money's being ate away by inflation, right? You know, and at the same time, we're spending billions on taking care of people that hate you. Okay, so let's keep it factual. Okay, what are the criminal punishments in their own countries for doing the crimes that they're accused of? Right, let's have a look. In Pakistan, for rape, you get the death penalty or life imprisonment. Chemical castration, they can legally do that, which means they can just destroy your testosterone, right? Public hanging is legal for extreme cases, right? because you can say, oh well, that's not fair. You know, it's like these people have rights too, or whatever, but they don't think of the rights of the people that they've raped, right? You say, oh, it's not a deterrent, right? It's not about a deterrent. It's about removing these people from society, because if you let these people out, right, these people, they're not going to randomly go and work at Tesco after doing 20 years to life for raping and killing children, right? They're not going to blend back into society, right? There's only one solution for them and for us. Like, realistically, is it actually fair for us to deport them back to Pakistan? It's fairer than us paying for them to be imprisoned, right? But is it fair to force these people back on their own people, right? Pakistan doesn't want them. We don't want them. The world doesn't want them. Racists should not be allowed to live. Racists should not be allowed to walk the streets. Your daughter, your mum, your wife shouldn't have to walk around and fear for her safety for the sake of keeping these people imprisoned at the cost of £4,000 a month. That's insane. It's so simple. We could just get rid of these people. And you know what? When you get, like, a lot of criminals, right, people don't want to admit, right, is that you're genetically predisposed to crime. If you're stupid, right, it's not your fault. I'm sorry, it's not fucking fair, right? If a dog's dangerous, you put it down, right? These people cannot be reformed. They can't be bargained with. They can't be reasoned with. They just act based on their emotions and feelings at any one time, right? So you let them out. They're going to do it again at some point. And at the very least, even if they don't, they're not going to be able to contribute to our society. They're just going to be a drain on us completely. And we send them back to Pakistan, then some fucking stupid girl in Pakistan's going to have to fucking deal with whoever we've sent back to them. We could save them a big problem and clean the whole world up by just removing these people from reality. Okay, in Pakistan, murder, you can get the death penalty or life in prison. The victim's family can accept blood money instead of execution. So, that's weird. It's pretty barbaric, but you know, like, they are dealing with barbarians. They know how to deal with barbarians. They know that they can't be reformed. So they have these policies in place because they can't afford to fucking to provide for these people. So just get rid of them. In Afghanistan, where the Taliban are in power, right, rape is considered a form of zina. Punishment can be death by stoning or shooting, public execution, or long imprisonment if you're not sentenced to death. So likely, if you fuck with someone's cousin or sister, right, you're likely going to get lynched anyway. But if the actual authorities get hold of you, they're going to put a bullet in your head or hang you from a tree until you're not here anymore, because you don't deserve to be here anymore. You know, you don't deserve to be around people. You don't deserve to be around people that are innocent, right? You deserve to be got rid of. In Iraq, rape, you get life imprisonment or death penalty if the victim is a child, or the rape involves the murder or kidnapping. So this is a country where you can legally marry 9-year-olds. Right, so even these backward people, right, they still say, if you do this crime, naughty naughty. In Syria, if you commit rape, you can get 15 years to life, or the death penalty if the rape leads to death. So that's quite soft for Syria, for the Middle East anyway. Murder, death penalty, or life imprisonment. In Turkey, if you rape someone, you can get 12 to 24 years in prison. So 12-year minimum, right? A lot of these people are getting out after a couple of years on good behaviour. Good behaviour, you know. You just say that you're a changed man, and you know. Okay, in Morocco, rape, 5 to 20 years in prison, life imprisonment if the victim is a child or the violent weapons is used. But in reality, what's going to happen is you will get smashed by a crowd of 100 to 200 people. Again, murder, death penalty, but still legal, but rarely carried out. Again, this isn't a land of laws. You know, this isn't like where the police get, like, in reality, the police over there can take bribes and can do whatever, right? In reality, if you commit murder in a Middle Eastern country, you are fucked. And it goes on. Tunisia, 20 years, life imprisonment, death penalty. Murder, death penalty, life imprisonment. You know, to get, Axel Ruda Cabana got a whole of life sentence. Do you know how rare it is in the UK to get a whole life sentence? Extremely rare for the absolute worst crimes. If you did a murder in Saudi Arabia, they would just get rid of you. Simple. They don't give a shit. And they shouldn't give a shit. I don't give a shit. And I rate them for that. Go on, Saudi Arabia.
What do you mean by whole life sentence?
Well, like, to actually get a whole life sentence with no chance of parole, you've got to be like...
every life sentence is classed as 99 years on the computer, on the paper.
Yeah, but you know, but like, to actually get...
You get a recommendation with it, so how severe the crime. So say you get a life sentence with an 18-year recommendation. You can't do. There's no way of getting out until at least the flipping 18-year mark, and actually first attempt at parole, and you'll always get knocked back at that, and then it'll be a few years after.
Yeah.
So depending on how severe, I think some of the worst recommendations I've heard in the UK where it's been like multiple murders and stuff, you know, where they've like added them consecutively.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and if you factor that into, if you look at Keir Starmer, right? Keir Starmer was a human rights lawyer before he was a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom or a member of the Labour Party. I think he was a member of the Labour Party, anyway, if he wasn't a Czech communist. He was responsible for the abolition of the death penalty in Jamaica. He got one guy off the hook who killed his wife and daughter, right, under human rights and got rid of the death penalty in Jamaica of his own accord. They have this thing called the cab rank rule, which is like, you know, like where a taxi has to be the first taxi has to take the first person that turns up, basically, right? So if you've got no cases ongoing, right, if you're the first person to be offered the case and you're a human rights lawyer, you're obliged to take it, right? That's just the done thing. Now, he had loads of cases and was busy, had a full, he was a functioning human rights lawyer. He had tons of stuff going on, right? And he chose on purpose to take these cases to abolish the death penalty because these people, I can only assume it's because they love murder and crime and they're evil and they worship Satan. I can't come to any other conclusion than that, right? Hashem Abadi in August 2020 for his role in 2017 Manchester Arena bombing. Because Abadi was under 21 at the time of the offence, he was not eligible for a whole life order, but the judge noted that the whole life term would have been appropriate. So he was too young, but he assisted his brother, Salman Abadi, in making a nail bomb to go and take to the Amiens Arena and blasting those kids at the Ariana Grande concert. Yeah. So you've got to do something that's like of insane national outrage, you know, like an Axel Rudakabana or Hashem Abadi. You know, you've got to get the absolute maximum out of the legal system. And if for a fraction of that in Saudi Arabia, you would be just destroyed.
So what I'm saying, life means life in these countries.
Life means life. Exactly. Like those people in Egypt are in prison forever and they're never coming out. You know, they would never fucking tolerate it. And instead of that, they go, this is expensive and this guy's never coming out. There's no reason for us to keep him alive. And the crimes he's done is so heinous. There's just no reason for he can't be rehabilitated or anything. Let's just get rid of him. You know, it's our duty to punish these people, right? In order to have a functioning society, we have to give the harshest punishments for the harshest crimes. The punishment should fit the crime, you know? So 55 years, right, of being looked after every month, every day, every second, every minute for years, right, is just ridiculous. It's absolutely, it makes no sense at all, right? It costs us money. It costs other people. It costs other people in terms of their lives, right? What's the point of keeping you alive? I don't understand it personally. I'm 100% for reinstating the death penalty.
The type of like sentence that guy would be doing as well, like it'd be looked after. Very, very, very looked after. Like be a prisoner and like.
I mean, Tommy Robinson got put in solitary confinement for like a year because he said something that was wrong, or he talked to some people coming out of a trial.
Solitary confinement is different to the block. Like the block solitary.
But I'm just pointing out, right, that solitary confinement is torture, right, by being by yourself and not getting to talk to anybody, right, like sat by yourself in a cell for months, years, or whatever, right, for the crime of saying something the government doesn't like. But these people we will facilitate actual real murderers and criminals and rapists to come over here and hurt children, and at the most we give them a smack on the ass, relatively speaking, compared to what they would get in their own countries. In their own country would just be like, well, destroy, get rid. No, you know what I mean? And, you know, can't hate them for it. Cannot hate them for it. So there you go. These are the punishments they receive in their countries of origin. Why are we paying £4,000 a month to house these people and to provide for them? Why are we inviting them over here and letting them stay in 5-star hotels, some of them, you know, giving them free iPhones, free Samsungs? Why are we providing their meals for them? Why do they have to do anything for themselves? You know, what can they possibly contribute to the society at best that we couldn't contribute by ourselves? If these people are such a boon, right, and if these people are such a great resource and the best and most motivated people coming over here to start businesses, right, why can't they go and do that in their own country? And why do they have to do it in our country? Why can't you apply for asylum in China? Why can't you apply for asylum in Russia? They're not doing that, are they? They're going where the money is. So it's all
complete, like, they're going where nice looking girls are walking around on the street where they can go and be like, oh yeah, the social media influencers are even going around with nice European white girls and getting them to say stuff like, my favourite type of man is Moroccan and my favourite type of man is Somalian, or whatever, because these videos go out there as like advertising from human traffickers to these people who are wanting to escape these places for whatever reason, right? As a means of enticing them over here, right? We are rolling out the red carpet for the worst of society, where in their country, they would be executed without a second thought. Right. Who's protecting these people? What's their agenda? Why are they coming over here? Why is it our problem in any way, shape or form? What can we possibly gain from inviting people that are statistically much more likely to rape than the average UK native-born person, right? And the thing is, why are we being harassed and arrested by the police for making inflammatory remarks on social media where people are getting rightly wound up from seeing inflammatory things on the news, right? When the migrants kicked off in when the migrant riots kicked off after Ruda Cabana in Southport, right? One woman said, "Oh, set fire to the hotel for all I care." Didn't even say do it, just said for all I care, right? She was given prison for that, right? For complaining about the problem, you are punished. The criminals who come here to create the problems, they're essentially smacked on the wrist at the very best. According to Freedom of Information requests, data published in 2025 and 2026 reveals that over 12,000 people were arrested in 2023 across 37 police forces in England and Wales for online related offences. That means 30 people are arrested every day for their speech and online activity, right? They are more concerned with coming for people who have opinions that they don't like, right, than for preventing rape and murder of women, children and men. I don't want to depress you too much, right? But I'm going to tell you a story to finish off with about a girl called Lola Daviet. On October the 14th, 2022, 12-year-old Lola Daviet was murdered in Paris. Her body was later found inside a suitcase in the 19th arrondissement, which I'm assuming means district or something. She had been abducted, raped, tortured and killed. The cause of death was asphyxiation. She was also stabbed and brutally mutilated. CCTV showed Lola entering an apartment building after school and following a woman inside. That woman was Dabia Benkired. Strong French name. Later that day, Benkired was filmed leaving the building carrying heavy luggage. Inside was Lola's body. The killer, Dabia Benkired, was an Algerian national who had overstayed her visa and was in France illegally. 2 months before the murder, she had been stopped at the airport without valid documents and ordered to leave France, but she was released because she had no criminal record. She was charged with murder of a minor under 15, rape with torture, acts of barbarism. Psychiatrists confirmed she was mentally fit and fully responsible for her actions. In October 2025, she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. This is the harshest possible sentence in France and is extremely rare. She became the first woman in French history to receive it. The first. The first one to receive it. So, like, as soft as we are, somehow the French are even softer than us. Lola's family was destroyed by this crime. Her father fell back into drinking and killed himself by drinking himself to death from the grief. Her dad passed away just 16 months after her daughter's murder and he was only 49 years old. This is the impact that it has. It's not just the people that are actually the victims of the crime. It's their families, their sisters and brothers and fathers, whatever. Imagine, right, if you'd spent your entire life bringing your child up, teaching it how to wipe its own ass and to go to school and ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, school holidays, birthdays, Christmases. You know, you've poured your life and heart and soul into raising this child. To have some random Algerian decide to just take it all away from you. As a father, my child is my most prized possession. For someone to destroy them, dismember them, rape them, put them in a suitcase and throw them away like a piece of rubbish, right, is beyond the pale, and there is no possible reason why this person deserves to walk on the same ground as me and breathe the same air as me, right? We need to put maximum pressure onto our governments, right, and forcibly change the law to remove these people from reality, because there is no excuse as to, it's a slap in the face to justice to keep these people alive, right? And I am in no way tarring all migrants with the same brush, right? But as nice as surely many of them may be, right, we cannot afford to take the risk when 1% of our populations on average are committing 40% of the sexual offences. This is insane. We are insane. This is suicidal empathy, and we are being convinced and demoralised to believe that we are evil and racist if we complain about rape, murder, torture, right? We need to establish standards again and become a normal country which goes, yeah, not allowed. Crime, not allowed, right? And it's so not allowed that you're not allowed to be alive anymore. Sorry, right? Listen, I don't want to depress you any further, right? I'm going to keep on reacting to all kinds of content. Let me know down in the description if you've got any thoughts of your own on this particular subject matter. Yeah. Right, I don't want to depress you too much, okay? But it's important that ordinary people understand the scale and magnitude of the problem and the depths of the horror that's being inflicted on Western Europe and America, all right? I'm not saying that all migrants are like this. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that every migrant is some horrible criminal or anything like that. Far from it, right? But if 1% of the population are doing 40% of the sexual offences, there's something wrong there. There's an agenda at play. They're trying their best to stoke civil conflict in this country. And it's important that the only way we get out of this is if the law can actually be respected enough where people go, okay, I'm not going to take matters into my own hands anymore. But of course, that's what they want. It's a problem, it's a reaction, it's a solution. I'm not advocating violence or anything like that. I'm just saying, let's change the law, let's re-establish death penalty, and let's make sure that no rapist or murderer goes unpunished to the absolute highest extent. I'll see you in the next one.